So leave, as I said earlier, leave the sensitive, creative soul at home that is the author. He or she is at home wrapped in cotton wool and is fine and safe and untouched by what happens today. But today you're here as a commercial self, and you'll go and report back to that author who is happily, uncrushed, butterfly, wings intact, at home. So you should go home and say, look, oh God, I'm terrible today. Learn all sorts of things about what you're doing wrong, and there's things about what you've done right, which is great, so let's work with that. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to rattle through and just quickly introduce yourself and say 2 or 3 minutes worth of something about your book, and hopefully what you'll get is just the top line. So hi, my name is blah. You might even say what your job is quickly, and then just my book is about, and try and get to the absolute top line of it. So no detail, just what would I say? Hi, I'm Jacq Burns, Director of London Writers Club. My book is about my family migrating to Australia, roughly at the time that man went to the moon, and it felt like my family had gone to the moon. Because when you think about creating stuff, you think about your arm and hand and how it goes from here, and once it travels down here, you do slightly kill it a bit. So try and keep it as pure as the original idea as you possibly can, and get it on the page. And if that means recording yourself and getting it transcribed, have you tried that?
I read it. You stick the phone on my phone, and then I'll write, and then I'll read the whole entire book. It takes a long time, but then you can listen back to it and hear where you've made mistakes.
So let's just take 10 minutes now to write down that 3-sentence pitch.
Yeah.
So we want to know, we want to know who and what the book's about and roughly what happens. So reduce it down as much as you possibly can.
In pictures where people include the what ifs, which is we represented a book called Probably Noon by Ben Rice, and that was about imaginary friends, and they went missing. So the picture of that would be, what if a little girl had 2 imaginary friends and they went missing? So that is a really good way to make a pitch that draws the reader in pretty quickly.
Neglected part of preparing your pitch and doing the sort of final drafts of your novel. Often people it hasn't occurred to them to think about this until someone asks them, and usually maybe only when the agent picks up your pitch do you realise that you haven't really given any consideration to your reader. So some questions to get you thinking. We'll do an exercise a bit later on this, because I've got something else to tell you, but essentially what we all need to know is, who is our reader? Who's the reader? A lovely exercise to do later, which is all about identifying them, so we'll cover that a bit later. In this book, it's not non-fiction you're writing, it's fiction, but there still needs to be a reason why you're writing this book and why you're writing it now. It can't just drop in from outer space. Literary fiction can, because it's all about the writing, the quality of the writing, just as a lyrical, timeless thing, allegedly. But it's I love literary fiction, but it's what makes literary fiction harder to sell, because it has to be seen and appreciated just for the writing. You're writing commercial fiction, some of you are writing thrillers that have certain conventions, fantasy too, there are conventions to all the things that you're writing, and your readers hang out in identifiable places. With the internet now, there are communities everywhere, and you can find them, access them, and start talking to them when you're in the process of writing. So we'll do an exercise shortly on that. And the why this book, why now? You have to have a reason for that. Interestingly, all of you have got good backstories. We'll go into that later. But that's another important hook for publicity, and it's an important hook for getting an agent interested in you. You haven't just come from nowhere and written something about something you know nothing about. You've all got really good, solid backstories. So we'll talk later about how you can use those and bring them to the fore. A couple of you mentioned them in your pictures. So we were starting to get a picture already of why you're the right person. A few of you, from your job, we could deduce that you were the right person to write the book. But let's play more with that. Why now? Might seem like an odd question, but there has to be a compelling reason to publish a book now. But the first time I ever spoke about writing, I went along to an event, it's called Storyville, and they said it was just a small informal event, and there were about 500, felt like 500 people in the room. There was a stage and a microphone, and I thought, great, you know, I'd never spoken with a microphone on stage before. And then the worst news was that I was to follow this guy who was from Hollywood. He was a script doctor and worked on all the great big blockbuster films. I thought, great, you know, this is before we'd even started London Writers Club, I think. So going back like 7 years or something. But then when you got on the stage, I thought, actually no, we're perfect. We perfectly complement each other, because what he said is when the meter's running, the highly paid actors are in the trailer, everything's costing a fortune, even just to sit there on hold. When the movie's not working, he doesn't talk to the director, doesn't talk to the actors, the producer, or anyone like that. He goes back to the person who had the original idea, possibly not even the person who wrote the script, and says to them, what did you hold back? What did you leave out? I get goosebumps just thinking about that. What did you hide from us when you wrote this script? Where did it really come from, and what you? And that's where the problem is solved at that point. So I'll just leave that with you, and move on. Kirsty's got a fantastic thing that Penguin have given her access to, that they apply to their manuscripts when they're praising them.
Yeah. So the Penguin editors were given this list that they were asked to consider when they get a manuscript, and if they don't answer yes or yay to each of the questions, then they don't take the manuscript on. They couldn't just take a manuscript on because they loved it. They had to go through all these questions. So anyway, so one, who is the readership for this book, which is, you know, which is what we've kind of talked about, and we'll talk about more. Does this story surprise me and take me to places I didn't expect? So apparently, I was told the other day, there's only 2 stories in the world. One, a man goes on a journey, a woman goes on a journey. 2, a stranger enters the room. And that's it. There's the only 2 stories in the entire world. And I kind of went through my books and I was thinking, oh God, they all apply. So, bearing that in mind, you have to create something unique around these only 2 stories. And are you surprised along the way? And I think that's quite lovely. As an agent, when I pick something up, I don't want to think, oh, this is going to happen next, this is going to happen next. I've got a crime book coming out next week, and I read it and I took her on the next day because it surprised me. You know, it was, and obviously crime, you know, there are twists and turns anyway, but it surprised me, and I didn't know what was going to happen next, and I've just read her second book, and I didn't know what was going to happen next, and I didn't.
Why did you take it on? I mean, the title is so exciting. Can everyone see that? Embittered Chill, family always.
It wasn't that title
always.
when I took her on. Okay. It was, oh God, it was something completely it was something completely different, and this is not what your book's about. It's about that, because it's set in winter in Derbyshire and everything is cold. The whole thing is that it's very cold and people are frozen in time. There was a crime and people haven't moved on, and so it's all about that kind of freezing emotion. But it surprised me, and I didn't see each event coming. Number 3, is this a main character I care about? A lot of people, actually, and we've done sort of pitch package reports and things, and they've put in characters that that we didn't like. Now, you don't have to necessarily like a main character, but you have to want to follow their journey. So they have to have. So maybe it's their flaws or their vulnerabilities that you want to follow. You know, but it can't be. You can't detest a main character, or you know, you just can't. Because you don't care enough to follow the book, and people say, yeah, but you don't have to like them. And it's not necessarily about liking; it's wanting to follow. So have you given them vulnerabilities that you makes them feel more human, more realistic? So it's that kind of thing. Number 4, am I personally moved by this story or situation? I mean, for an editor, they've got to come into a room, a table sort of this size, and they've got to sell it to all their colleagues, and they're from sales, marketing, publicity, people higher than them, people lower than them, and they have to be emotionally moved by a book. So, and that can happen with a funny book, with a sad book, with a tragic book. There are feelings. It's not, you have to be emotionally moved by a book. And I completely find that with every book I take on, I am moved by it in some way. So 5, is this a theme, emotion, concern that a lot of readers will be able to relate to? So even things like, even fantasy, there are underlying themes that a reader can relate to. I took on, this is YA, but it was a story about how the sea rose up and there was only a tiny bit of land left in the middle, and that was, obviously it's never going to happen. How can we relate to this strange thing? But at the heart of it, there was a grandma and her granddaughter, and it was about their relationship. And they could have been absolutely anywhere. They could have been in Australia, they could have been on the moon. This relationship was at the heart of the book, and that's what, when I sold it to the editor, that's what she related to, was that relationship. So even if your events are so, if they're crime, they're so horrific, you think, well, how on earth can anyone relate to that? But there has to be sort of, at the heart of it, there has to be things that the reader can feel that, oh, that, that's kind of me, or I know that, or I feel that fear, or that sort of thing. Okay, number 6, has this been done a million times before? I've spoken about the fact there's only 2 stories in the world. But a lot of times when I get submissions, I think, I've read this before, and that's often why I say no to it, because I just feel like I'm just reading the same over and over again. And I think a lot of times that's when a reader thinks, what's really hot at the moment? Oh, Gone Girl, I'm going to read it. I met an editor, I know the agent on Monday said that she was looking for something like Gone Girl, but I met an editor the other day and she said, if someone sends me a book that says this is like Gone Girl, personally throw it out the window. And they're on a very high building, that's hotter, so it would go for miles. So following on from that, number 7, well, I want to read this manuscript 10 or more times. Okay, editors and agents have to read things over and over again. Before I send something out, I possibly read it 3 times. At least, and if people are editing stuff, maybe 4 or 5. And if I'm slightly bored the first time, by the 5th time, it's going to get really boring. So an editor has to feel. And actually, when I do take people on, I quite like reading things over and over again because you love things, But an editor's got to, they've got to read it even more than that because they've got to read it after it's been edited, after it's copy edited. They've got to keep reading this.
So if you don't love something, you're not going to sell it. That's just how it is.
Completely.
So
completely.
You have to love it.
Yeah.
So
but
we
that
have
means
to convince you that
completely. But that means things like reading a book aloud. When you read something aloud, there are sentences that you'll just think, well, maybe you don't. But when I read stuff aloud, if I'm writing something and I read it aloud to myself, there are sentences I think, I'm boring myself. The sentence is way too long, I've gone off on a tangent. Those sentences will stop you getting an agent.
Because when you're editing, there are often sentences that you skip over, you think, oh, that bit's alright. If you ever think, oh, that bit's alright, I won't
even look at that page.
Yeah.
That's because it's boring you. So you've got to strip it all down. Okay. Is the voice, character, authentic and real? Jacq touched on talking about voice earlier on. You've got to feel that the person who's narrating this book is real. And that goes without saying. And if that doesn't, when I read a book that I really love, I can hear a voice in my head telling me the story. And I don't know, a lot of agents say you've got to get the voice right, and that's really hard to do because no one can really describe what they mean by that. And I think it's a kind of a bit of a lazy way for agents to say what they're looking for because it doesn't really mean anything. It's consistency. It's making sure you write it in your way, and I think a lot of times people get voice wrong is when they try and be a writer and they try and write their book in a certain way. When I write with writers, work with writers, I just say, just write it how you would say it. You cannot be a certain way. If you're not hugely commercial, don't write a hugely commercial book just because you think, oh, it'll sell more, Or if you're not particularly literary, then you don't write a flowery literary book. You have to write in your voice, in the way that, and when you read it aloud, in a way that kind of will tell you whether it's right or wrong, because it will sound right. But it is consistency all the way through it as well that's really important. Final point, does the action of the story move at a good pace and hold our interest? Does tension build as the story moves on? I mean, that's to do with plot and narrative. If you've got to that point where an agent's asked for a whole manuscript, you're much further down the line. But I think a lot of people really work on their first 3 chapters. I've noticed this. And when I've asked for a whole manuscript, I've been really excited. And then I've read the 4th chapter and I thought, well, this is a different book. This is really weird. Because people are obsessive about the first 3 chapters, and then it completely dips. You know why I never read them? Because people do them so badly, and they absolutely do my head in. And I get them, and I just think, I read them and I think, one, I asked for 1-page synopsis, okay? They should always be double-spaced. No. People send me their 3 chapters. Exactly. And I'm like, how can I read it when it's like that? Because actually it should be 3 pages, but you've crammed it so tightly together it's 1 page.
Good trick.
Because I asked for 1 page.
Bloody
it's not. Exactly. I can see it in my mind because everyone does that.
It's supposed to be double-spaced on 1 page.
Isn't that hell?
That's
my idea.
It's particular hell if you didn't know.
No, it's not. It's only hell if you try and cram in absolutely everything. Okay. I don't want to know everything. I just want to know these questions. So I've done these questions just to sort of help you along. Number 1, what is the story about? Now, that's quite hard to do sometimes. But by answering these questions, you will distill your story, and sometimes it makes you go back to your draft anyway, because you think, oh god, there's all this padding that I shouldn't really have in there anyway. Who are the main characters? Don't, in your synopsis, put hundreds and hundreds of characters. There is it's like being on stage. There's people at the front, there's people in the middle, and there's people at the back. People at the back, please don't mention in your synopsis, because I don't even want to know. You'll mention them once in the synopsis, and I don't know who they are. Just mention the people at the front, and then maybe the people slightly behind them. So it's who are the main characters, what do they want, what are their motivations, where do they want to get to, why do they want it, and then what stands in their way is this sort of follows a pattern, but pretty much every book can fit into this pattern. You have the main characters, they want something, there's something stopping them. And you've got to get that across in the synopsis, as well as telling us the story in a really simple way. What is the theme of the novel? This is really a tricky one, because some people say, it's love and friendship. And I always think, every book is about love and friendship. What is your theme? That is the sort of universal theme, or it's about hatred. Well, how is that hatred thing? How is it yours? What do you say about it? What is it different?
Excuse me.
It's your theory on that emotion that I want to know about. I don't want you to say it's a love story. Every book has a love story in, pretty much every book. It's what you are telling us about. So be very specific. If you're saying themes, be very specific about what your theme is. And I know it's really hard to do, and this sort of thing, synopsis, should take you, sometimes it takes people weeks to do. When you've written your book, getting your pitch, the package ready and the proposal ready, should take you quite a while. And where people go wrong is they finish their book, they polish it, they edit it, they send it out. And actually all of this other stuff should take a long time. The submission letter should take ages. The synopsis should take ages. You have one chance with an agent, and you'll blow it if you don't get these little bits right, because it's they're all layers, and if I can't get, we'll talk about the letter this afternoon, but if I can't get past the letter, And then I get to the synopsis, and I don't read the synopsis, but a lot of agents do. So if they don't get then past that, they won't even get to your writing. They'll say no. Everyone likes to imagine that agents read the letter, the synopsis, and 3 chapters live. They absolutely don't, and no agent does. They skim through the letter as quick as they can. They may miss out the synopsis, but they probably skim the synopsis, and then they'll read the first paragraph maybe, and if they're enticed enough, they'll keep reading. If you get someone reading more than 20 pages of your chapter, they are seriously interested in your writing, because they just don't have time. They are literally churning through these, and it's cruel, but it should make you want to get these things right.
But you're asking an agent to work unpaid for you for 18 months to 2 years without any payment, and they've got to answer to their organisation, their employers. They've got to justify why they've taken you on. So it's entirely understandable. And maybe the model for agenting will change, because personally I can't see how it can sustain the way it is currently. Because as you're asking somebody to invest in you, and then a publisher, you're asking them to pay in advance. So up front they're giving you money, they're putting their team behind you, they're putting you in their publication schedule. So there's considerable resources being pushed behind you before they see any money. So they'll probably again take 3 years to see any money back from a book. So there's a lot of talk about gatekeeping in our industry. It's there for good reason. And if you look at the amount of self-published rubbish out there, then you'll see what the job that gatekeepers have been doing all this time, just helping get good stuff out there. I want somebody good behind me telling me my work's not good enough.
Yeah. So don't include, in your synopsis, don't include adjectives, adverbs, trim it all really back. You need to sort of almost write it out 2 pages long and then just go through and take out what you can. And don't include secondary characters or plots. There's always lots of backstory that you can add. You could make your synopsis 10 pages long. It's not film treatment, it's a synopsis, it's a summary. Read it aloud, obviously, it has to make sense. Even if you've trimmed it really back, it's still got to make sense. You've still got to get the story from this. And yeah, don't leave any cliffhangers. You've got to tell the entire story. So don't, it's not a da-da-da-da, what happens next? It's not that. You actually have to go through and tell us everything. Because obviously the agent has 3 chapters and they'll want to know what happens next, so that the story is developed enough. It's making it as clear as possible, really, which is really hard.
Yes.
And I hate writing synopsis. So when I send a book out, I'll show you some letters this afternoon that I sent out for these 2. I will just include like a paragraph summary, because I hate writing synopsis. But this is your chance to hook an agent, so you need to do this because everyone asks to do this, and you have to follow the guidelines. You need to know your story well enough to write a synopsis. If you can't write a synopsis in 1 page, no one's going to be able to sell your story, because that synopsis will be shown to the marketing people, will be shown to publicity, people who don't have time to read the whole book or don't have time to read the first 3 chapters. They will be shown that synopsis, and that's the basis they're going to make on whether they put their hands up and say, yeah, buy the book, or don't buy the book. So, that's sort of, it is going to be shared with people. Okay, so, pitch. Right, shall I talk about letters first? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to hand, these are some letters that I have sent into editors. So, just to give you a kind of sense of length of letters, they were submission letters they used for these 2 books, Marcus and Sarah's books. They're obviously slightly different because I know the editors, or
are there 2 different ones?
Yeah, so if you, just pass them around. It's just to give you a sense of what they...
I've only got half one.
Yeah, no, I've only done a few copies. I just pass them around.
Read them and pass
them
them
read them around. They're not... It's just to give you a sense of how long I think a letter should be. Sometimes I get letters which are like 2 pages of this, you know, and by the second I'm absolutely confused, I don't know where this is all going. Sometimes people submit things to me, they don't even mention the title of the book or what the book's even about to begin with. You know, I have to get right down to the bottom. And they say, oh, I'm attaching. And you think, why didn't you tell me that right at the start? You know, the first thing you should say to them is why you're writing to them. You know, what are you sending? The first 3 chapters of my book, blah, 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 and then you include the pitch that we've been talking about. Which should be a little paragraph. I mean, if you look in the sample letters, then it's not long that I've used. It's just, it is, maybe they're a bit longer than 3 sentences, but they are, it's just a paragraph to explain. I was saying...
Is it worth reading one of those out?
Yeah, I can read one out.
Yeah, quick. Should do that as well, that's what I've done.
Yeah, have a look. So, okay, so this one, which is this book, which I've read already. Maybe I should read Marcus's. Read Marcus's. Okay, so I was talking about the other day. Okay, so quite often in pitch letters, submission letters, I take a little snippet of the writing because it's a really quick way to show an editor the tone of a book. And the style of the book, it's just it's like a really shortcut way of doing it. So for Marcus's book, I took the first, and often I take the first few lines, if they're good. And so that's what I did for his letter. So I just said, I'm delighted to be sending you...
the first 3 lines of his book now.
So I said, I'm delighted to be sending you Marcus Sedgwick's first adult book for your consideration. He's written over 10 children and YA books, many of which have been shortlisted for awards. He obviously is well known, so you know it's slightly different. He's not a debut author, but I had to establish him as an adult, you know, writer, which is probably why I chose the first few lines. So that's what I did to begin with. Then I wrote the next paragraph, which is now called A Love Like Blood, is the story of one man's obsession with finding the truth, told over the course of 20 years from 1944 to 1968. It takes us from Paris to Cambridge and then throughout Europe, intense and compelling. This is a dark thriller about a cat and mouse chase between 2 men. It's also about blood. And that's it. That's all I put about it, because I thought that pretty much summed, you know, that's my pitch. And I used to put a lot more than that, but I realised editors, like agents, don't have any time really to wade through stuff. So the pitches that we were working on, the 3 lines, they're very much what you put into this letter. So what we've been working on throughout the day should now all slot in. So you say, you know, why you're writing to them, the title of your book, the pitch, and then a bit about you, which is what we talked about backstory. Again, just 1 paragraph. So for Sarah's book, so there's a paragraph about what the book's about. I've said, because this is actually, it's kind of a quartet it's going to be, but it's also their standalone. But I've said Sarah's next book will be about betrayals set again in Derbyshire. So I didn't say anything further than that, because I didn't want to confuse the issue. I didn't want them to feel that they had to publish both. So that's why I just did 1 line. And then I went on, so there's a little paragraph about her. Obviously she is a well-known blogger in the crime world, so it was quite easy to position her in this world. But you have all, as we've discovered today, you've all got stuff you can put into that paragraph that's all relevant to your book, to your readership.
A line or 2 then?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it really depends what's relevant. Don't go beyond a paragraph, you know? And just keep it very relevant and quite interesting. Sometimes you can put stuff in that's not, you know, absolutely relevant to your book, but it's quite interesting, you know, because it gives the editor, the agent, a full sort of picture of who you are. But just don't bore them. I mean, it really can be that. Well, that's even shorter. The best submission, these are my submission letters, but the submission letters I've had in, that I've taken people on, the best ones have been the shortest ones. that have literally told me what they're attaching, the title of their book, and sometimes I'm thinking, I read the title and I think, oh, that's great, right, I'm on to the writing, because the title is so good. And it's ridiculous, but it's honestly, now I just put the title, I don't even want to know who you are, I'm reading.
And of course you throw the synopsis in the thing.
Yeah.
I'm on to the writing because the title is so brilliant.
But when in those acquisition meetings, you can prepare for weeks and weeks and weeks, agonise over every word. I'd go in and I'd say the title, and they'd all start talking at the top of me, and I'd think, it's great that you want this book, and you've already decided you're having it by the way you're talking, but a bloody pitch, you know, and you kind of be torn, thinking, yeah, it's great you're having the book, but
we haven't spoken about titles because in a way we haven't kind of delved in too deeply into your books, but you know, you want a title that just makes the agent just think, oh great, right, I'm going to, where's the writing, you know? And
editing is part of the process. It doesn't mean you've done it wrong. As the same way as when people critique it, it doesn't mean you've done it wrong. It just means that there are steps and hoops to jump through. One of the authors I work with is a non-fiction author, John Williams, who wrote a book called Screw Work, Let's Play. And he said, you know, what I've finally realised is that you do not compare a finished book, like something you see in a bookshop, with your first draft. They are different beasts. That book in the bookshop has been through 10 or more drafts by the author, then by the agent, and then by the commissioning editor, then by the copy editor, then the proofreader, and countless other friends and beta readers in between. So don't ever fall into that mistake of thinking that you need to produce a polished product from the outset. When you sit down to write, don't even try and get it perfect, just get it out onto the page, and as you can see, there's plenty of time later for conscious reflection to see what you've got. I really hope today's been useful for you. I can see that you're all exhausted now from this volume of stuff that's been coming at you. What would be really good if you can, I know lots of you are already members and have come along, but if you come along to London Writers Club and now hear an agent talk about the sorts of things they're looking for, you'll start making connections and joining up the dots about, okay, this is what this is all about. The next event is on July 21st, and it's a kind of a closing for the summer, because we don't have an event in August, closing for the summer kind of party at in King's Cross, and so you're welcome to bring along some drinks if you like. We'll provide some lovely snacks. There's a courtyard there. There's 2 speakers from a fantastic agency. It's not
Kirsty Brown.
It's Kirsty Brown, isn't it? From a very big one of those super agencies.
It will be filmed, won't it?
Yeah, it will.
They
So
only film these two, though, so, and the agents. Quite safe.
So do start to join those dots together and keep on with what you're doing.